Can you leave the door closed, please? Can you leave the door closed, please? I've changed up our project in one specific way. Nope, I want to talk about it first. This is what I just changed. Before, what we had, which is on GitHub, is a fully working version where we set the frames and we move things based on distance to the views, frame, etc. Kind of a pain in the butt. What I did now is I pulled out the frame characteristics, so I do not initialize my view or my button with a frame. Instead, I am configuring some constraints for each of them. For the button, I'm just saying, here's where you're going to be. And so if I pull this guy up, that's where my button is. I got rid of the curvature because it's not really important to me right now. We're dropping squares. For my view here, which is bouncing up and down, what I did was I created constraints as variables, which feels a little weird, right? But they're just some instance of some type, and all I need to do is create a constraint, and now I've got that thing. That's all. So this refers to a constraint on my view. Now in the future, if I talked about my view with constraint, what type do you think my view with constraint is? Check it out. My view with constraint. It's just an instance of NS layout constraint. That's all. We've been using those forever. That's just what it's called in our code. We all cool with this so far? And then what I'm still doing is based on distances I'm animating. Like, I haven't changed this so that I'm affecting any constraints, but I'm just doing this based on distances. I want to show you what happens if I don't have the animation, because I think this is important. So if I don't have the animation, it just moves, right? Makes sense. It's not animating it. It's not saying move over some duration of time. So that makes sense to me. The animation was just some effect when we are working on our view to have it do that smoothly in a way that you can follow with your eye, rather than just pressing the button and having it move in the very next chance that the main thread has the ability to move it. So just setting up the screen. When we do this with constraints, we're going to do it a little bit differently. What we're going to do is we're going to use something very important called layout if needed. Let's look at the documentation for layout if needed. Layout if needed. So something to do with a view. Lays out the subviews immediately if layout updates are pending. Let's read a little more. Use this method to force the view to update its layout immediately. When using auto layout, the layout engine updates the position of views as needed to satisfy changes in constraints. Using the view that receives the message as the root view, this method lays out the view subtree starting at the root. If no layout updates are pending, this method exists without modifying the layout or calling any layout-related callbacks. Right now, the most important thing for us is this sentence. When using auto layout, the layout engine, anyone ever use the layout engine? You use it all the time. It updates the position of the views as needed to satisfy changes in constraints. So this function, if we change the constraints for one of our views, and we call it, it's going to perform that update for us. Otherwise, all we've done is we've changed some property on some view, and then that's it. Like, if your entire app is a giant while loop, We've only said, hey, here's your property, it's changed. We haven't said, all right, now go ahead and change that in what the user sees. So we're using this layout if needed to, after updating a constraint, actually show that update in the UI. Kimball. Is it similar to didSet? So it's not similar because didSet is a property observer. This is something we're going to explicitly call. And going back to this like header here, lays out the subviews immediately if layout updates are pending. In this project, I've got a button and I've got a view that's bouncing up and down. We say layout the subviews. What am I going to call layout if needed on? Which view? Yep. So these two views are subviews of the default view in this view controller, of self.view. So when I want to make an update, I'm going to call self.view.layout if needed. First, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that number. What's the number? It's for the constraint of this guy. If we go back to our code, it's still some kind of hybrid, disgusting thing where I'm setting up a whole bunch of layout constraints, and then I'm still animating using like all this mathy stuff. Sounds like a pain. What I'm going to want to do is use constraints instead of number mathy things. Before I do that, I'm going to add all this stuff to the project. I'm going to push it up to GitHub just so that you can have it as we make the thing. Figures, subviews, using auto layout, animation, still, WIP. What do I mean when I say WIP? Anyone ever heard that before? Work in progress. Neat. Push it up. All right. So again, my goal here is, in this animation, I want to say, hey, do me a favor. Can you please do all this updating, but using auto layout rather than using numbers? Anyone have any idea how we can change a constraint? Here's the nice thing. I've already set these up. Got a height constraint, a width constraint, a center X constraint, and a center Y constraint. Which of these things do you think I'm going to want to change in order to get this guy moving up and down? Yeah, I'm going to change the Y constraint so that the center of my object is moving. So it'll go down, it'll go up. The size doesn't change, so the width and the height are the same. The X doesn't change, it's still centered horizontally. The constraint I want to change right here is the center Y constraint. Cool with that? Cool. All right. So let's say, I don't know. Let's look at my view center Y constraint. Let's look at the properties of an NS layout constraint. We've got a constant, a first item, a first attribute, an identifier is active, priority, relation, second anchor, second item. Interesting. Important to know, not for right now, but first item and second item, what do you think those relate to? The second item, no, much simpler. The second object participating in a constraint. Remember segways? Remember they had a destination and they had a source? We're just talking about literally the two items that this constraint ties together. So for my center Y constraint, the first item is my view. And the second item is just self.view. That's it. Simple, easy peasy. That's just in case you want to backtrack and find out more about the things that you're trying to get. For right now, what we're going to want to change is the constant. Let's look at what constant is. Constant added to the multiplied second attribute participating in the constraint. What do you think that means? Constant added to the multiplied second attribute participating in the constraint. I don't know. Let's just print it out. So every time I press the button, all it's going to do is print this out. Push my button, 0.0. All right. Saying the constant, because they are anchored, center Y's are equal to each other. There's no distance between the center Y of my center anchor and the center Y of the default view in this view controller. All right, let's see if we can change that. Anyone got any ideas? I don't know. Let's do something like -10. Can we do that? I think it's going to give me this yellow thing here saying you're doing some math, but that's not going anywhere. Constant is just a number, right? It's a CG float. So I can't just say, take that number and subtract 10. I have to assign that value somewhere. What might I assign it to? Even easier. I can just say, this is now equal to the same thing minus 10. This constant is a value. I'm just making that value smaller. Thanks, Kevin. Now let's see what happens. What do you think is going to happen? What am I going to see on my screen? Any guesses? I've heard go up, go down. Ayla, what do you think is going to happen? What's going to happen if I change this constant? Cool. It's gone now. Because it's only going 10 points at a time. So like, yeah, less than like, yeah, it's going into negative space here, where 0 for the y direction is right here, and it's just going past it.
But it's still, it's not on the screen, it's still going. Does that mean like nobody would be able to do anything because it's still in view, even though it's not there? Like technically, it's still what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, while this button's being pressed, yes. So,
It continues to express itself, right?
no, I'm pressing it. We're not animating it just yet. I want to show you what it's like when we change the constants. When we animate it, if we make that animation repeat, then yeah, we're just occupying the entire main thread. You guys want to animate it? All right. UIView.animate. Say, do it over 1 second. Do something. I'm going to say move by 100 points. I'm going to say go down by 50. Let's see what happens. Come on, dude. I need a reference to self. I need a reference to self in my closure. All right. Oh, that sucked. Let's make it go slower. Super slow. Just like to let you in on a little hint, when you're testing things in your UI, I would use like, if you didn't know if something moved 50, I would try like 500 rather than 60. You know, if you're looking for some noticeable effect, do something exaggerated so that you can see exactly what happened. Oh man, it's not animating like I want it to. Why is that? It's a little different than what we were doing before, and for a very specific reason. Did I use a delay? I did, but I should see the thing moving over 6 seconds, making that 50-point change. That's what I'm hoping to see here. So when I change a constraint, here's what's going on. When I change a constraint, what I'm doing is, I'm just saying, here's your new position, right? Different than when we were dealing with the frame. Now I'm saying, relative to something else, we got to find you, rather than, here's your absolute position on the screen. We had X, Y, width, and height. So, I'm going to animate this. Just going to change. That's a real damn shame. Maybe now would be a good time for me to use my layout if needed. What do y'all think? Okay. See how slow it's moving? Oh, yeah. All right, let's make it go a little faster. Cool. Pretty good so far. Kind of sucks right now, right? Just moving 50 points. I don't love it. The nice thing about this constant is it's a CG float. And you can get a constant on any constraint. So I could look at self.view dot bottom anchor dot constant. Where you at, bro? I'll come back. Self.view dot bottom anchor. Hang on. Come to me. Whoa. Before we go any further, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to, yes. I'm also trying to use that distance to figure out how far I am from the bottom. Yep. So a bottom anchor, yeah, the thing about an anchor is they're not really like holding any values. All these things are stuff they inherit from NS object, which is not worth our time. Yeah, so we do know something about the screen, right? Self.view.what can we look at to find out more about the screen? Say it louder. Yeah. We could look at the bounds and we could say, go ahead and get this and find me the max y value, and then let's see what happens. Well, when I press the button, it's going to try to get down to the max y. Ah, man, it's gone. How do we get it to come back? Just uncomment this stuff. I'm into it. Let's see if that works. Okay, so we might still have to do some math, my friends. What math do we have to do, Sam? Visually, look at it. I want to say this guy should drop all the way to the bottom, but no further. I want it to stop at, let's call it max y for now. I like where you're going. So you're saying maybe we need a different constraint? Yeah, I agree. Maybe we want a constraint from the top of here to the top of the safe zone. So maybe we'll change this guy and say top anchor, call this the top anchor. Make sure we change this. If I make this change, where's the top of this going to be? Yep, it's going to start at the top of the view. So maybe I'll say, let's add a constant to it. It's equal to this, but with a constant of, I don't know, maybe, what value type is it expecting? Something. Maybe with a distance of my view height constraint dot constant. Say that it should be one whole square's distance from the top. Let's see if that does what we want. All right, let's go. Ah, man. Visual thing. What else do we need to account for here? If I'm saying the top of this thing is going to be all the way at the bottom. The size of the box, that's right. So we're saying I'm going to set it so that the top anchor constraint is actually equal to the size of my box I'm dropping. I'm sorry, equal to whatever this y coordinate is minus the size of the box I'm dropping. And where are we getting that size of the box from? Eric, you got this, I promise. We've already used it once. Where do we get, so we've set no frame here. Instead, we're using all constraints. Which constraint sets the size of the box, and I guess in particular important is in the vertical direction. What do we call the vertical constraint for something to itself? So just if you were describing like from the bottom of the box to the top of the box, what would you call that in like plain English? Sorry? Yeah, that distance. What would you call that if you were describing someone's, I don't know, the bottom part of someone to the top part of someone? Yep. So we have a constraint here for height. Which one is that? Cool. So what I'm going to want to do here is when I press the button, I'm going to say my view's top anchor constraint, which used to be basically one whole body length from the top, is now going to be all the way down to the bottom minus one whole body length. So that minus the same exact value. Let's see what happens. Boom. Yeah. Yep. So something like, yeah, I would need another constraint though. Or at least I'd need to constrain vertically using the bottom there. You know what I mean? Yeah, I could do that in here. Like if I replace this guy is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I meant. That also bottom.
Yeah. I kind of just prefer to do it from the top, but that would make more sense mathematically. I don't know. Kind of preference kind of keeps things cleaner. Do you guys like our box that falls and gets back up? It's very inspirational. I agree. What? Yeah. So this is basic animation. What an animate function does is it literally just changes the view over some period of time, right? This animation's closure is just you saying what should be done over the time of the duration after some delay, maybe with some options like repeat this thing, keep doing it, or let's say I got rid of that, auto reverse. If I repeat this, what happens, Crystal? So before it was dropping, then it was bouncing back up. What do you expect to see this time? Let's check it out. So without that auto reverse, it's not reversing whatever action occurred inside of this closure. So it's just literally going from that top constraint constant down every time. In the same way, what do you think happens if I get rid of the repeat? Carry here? I feel like I haven't annoyed Carrie today. Carrie's not here. Damn. Someone, what do you think happens if we don't have repeat and just do auto reverse? Nothing? Just goes once, goes down, goes right back up. Oh no. But also what happens is this change becomes permanent. So we've said, let's make a change. And then that change gets fulfilled. Right? On line 51, we were just saying, show what happens when you do that change. But if I've actually made that change to what's going on, we've had an infinite loop before, so we've never seen what the change is. Maybe we'll need to do something like reverse that. So say like let old constraint or old constant equal this guy right now. Then say this guy should be set to that. And then maybe after that, say this guy is set to old constant. Hopefully that works. Let's find out. Oh no, it's not. Oh no. Let's do it again and see what happens. Oh man. Damn. So maybe this needs to be in the completion block. Ah. Oh, come on, bro. Done and hold on. Let's get the syntax right. Okay. Done and then that guy. Let's just check these. Yep. Doink. Cool. What is this completion closer? Good talking. What is this completion closure? When does it get run? Yeah, after the animation's over. So this is just literally saying, what do you want to happen when this animation is over? Well, my animation was to go ahead and make it so that my view dropped all the way to the bottom, and then with this auto reverse, it came all the way back up. But I had actually made a change to that constraint, and so I need to reverse that. That's all we did. It's pretty cool. Animations are cool. All right, never mind, whatever. Where's some questions? Rod. Nice. Can you tell us what question you answered for yourself? Yeah, because what we're going to get here is we're saying, before we had this change in the completion handler, we were saying the change we are making is that this thing should go all the way to the bottom. Like, without the animation, we're just literally saying its new position is the bottom. The animation does some really nice work for us and has it and sends it to the bottom in a nice like visual way. We could repeat that animation where it went for an infinite loop, but ultimately, if this animation only runs one time, the way that our view ends up is it's at the bottom. And so in the completion here, that's why I made sure to just reverse what I did. Only because we were bouncing a block here. Like you might not do that. You might not reset it for some other desired effect. Ian.
Can I like change the size of it? Like, the animation be
I will let you try that out because we're going to go into that a little more on Monday.
change the alpha value, so it goes from like 1.0 down to like 0.0.
Yeah, for sure. You could just say my view dot my come on dot alpha is equal to 1.0. Just to make it explicit, it's probably already set to 1.0. And I'll say down here in the animation, it's going to be equal to 0.0. Like, we're literally saying make it disappear at the bottom.
So that would be across the duration. Make that change.
It'll make that change, but then with the auto reverse, what happens? Yep. So it'll just, it's pretty much like Control Z at the end of the animation. That's the auto reverse. Go, buddy. Ah, it disappeared. Ah, it came back. Ah, now it's gone. Probably because I need to reset the alpha in my completion. Be quiet. I think maybe on Monday we'll also get into that wonderful phrase, unknown self, that you've seen plenty of times. Not on a Friday, though. That's one we tried last time. Come on. Whee! See ya. Oh, welcome back. Cool.
You make the bottom move so that it just keeps moving and it's still like, oh, like where it is.
I bet you could do that.
Always curious.
You could do pretty much anything. Like, I think that's what you're finding out is you could have a really, really short-term animation that moves the button repeatedly.
Stuff at angles, I'm assuming, for obviously there's a lot of time stuff.
Yeah. We're just going up and down. You can go right and left. Can you curve? We're going to talk about Beziers, which are ways of representing curves. Let me see. What are some other things you need? Oh, I just want to point out, because I got a bunch of questions about this, the actual action here, which is marked Objective-C, you might see some people using @IBAction. IBAction implements Objective-C, so this is something corresponding to the runtime in Objective-C. I bet you don't care, especially on a Friday at nearly 5 p.m., but both will work. IBAction just makes this function available to you if you do go back and use Interface Builder for anything. But IBAction is just implementing the same thing that this Objective-C tag does. Jason. Yeah, I think if you're making an app that's purely programmatic, you should use Objective-C. If you're making an app that has at least some interface builder in it, use IBAction. So like for your weather apps, I would recommend using IBAction just in case like happened to be the case that you decided, actually this other view I'm going to make programmatically, I want to make this one using a zip or something like that. Yeah? You guys like animations? Cool. I know you have plenty of work to do, but make cool animations over the weekend. Then we can share them on Monday. Make sure they're like appropriate for the classroom. Thank you. All right.